Okay, we'll begin. Adonay, Eloheinu aleinu ma'aseh yadenu koneinu aleinu ma'aseh yadenu koneinu. I'd like to welcome everyone to Shiur tonight in Shaare Orah. First, I'd like to dedicate this Shiur tonight L'ilui Nishmat Harav Aaron Volkin, Zichron Tzadik Livracha, Ruach Adonai Tenechenu Began Eden, Tzvi Hirsch Ben Mordechai, Ruach Adonai Tenechenu Began Eden, Eliezer Ben Yeshayahu David, Ruach Adonai Tenechenu Began Eden, Shemaya Ben Adina, Ruach Adonai Tenechenu Began Eden, and David Ben Yamin Ben Moshe Yaakov, Ruach Adonai Tenechenu Began Eden, Hatun Hana Bat Mazam Miriam, Ruach Adonai Tenechenu Began Eden, Ruth Bat Rachel, Ruach Adonai Tenechenu Began Eden, Me'ira Bat Chaim, Ruach Adonai Tenechenu Began Eden, Zina Bat Shura, Ruach Adonai Tenechenu Began Eden, and Hana Rachel Bat Binyamin Yehuda, Ruach Adonai Tenechenu Began Eden. להבדיל בין הביתים לחיים, ורפואה שלמה פשבח בן חתון חנה, אלנה רפנה לו, אלנה רפנה לו, אלנה רפנה לו. Also for Reuven ben Hatun Hana, Elna Rafana lo, Elna Rafana lo, Elna Rafana lo. For Eliyahu ben Sarah, Elna Rafana lo, Elna Rafana lo, Elna Rafana lo. For Moshe ben Bavai, Elna Rafana lo, Elna Rafana lo, Elna Rafana lo. For Marcel bat Fortuna, Elna Rafana la, Elna Rafana la, Elna Rafana la. For Yael bat Dinah, Elna Rafana la, Elna Rafana la, Elna Rafana la. And for Sarah Frumat bat Leah, Elna Rafana la, Elna Rafana la, Elna Rafana la. Also Rafah Shema for Miriam bat Esther, Elna Rafana la, Elna Rafana la, Elna Rafana la. And for Rafah Shema for all the people affected by the coronavirus, may they have a complete and speedy recovery. Elna Rafana lahem, Elna Rafana lahem, Elna Rafana lahem, in the Zhut of the Torah we're going to learn tonight. So we're up to page Samach Daled in the Shaare Orah, and we're below the line, and we're by Nun Vav. And basically, we discussed last time about En Mayim Mitkayamim Ba, that there's no water. We made a distinction between two types of collections of water. One was called a bore that has Mayim, and then there's another bore that has Mayim Chaim, living water. And then there's borot that are nishbarim, that are broken, that don't contain any water. The water just comes out of them, leaks out of them. And those are borot that is talking about the other side, the sitra achra. And this is what he's going to discuss here. So it says over here in Nun Vav, Kid'ita b'Gemara, like it's taught in the Gemara, in Masechet Shabbat, Habor rek en bo mayim, haval nechashim ve'akreabim yesh bo. That the pit that they threw Yosef into, the Gemara says, what does it mean rek en bo mayim? Of course, if it's rek, it has no water. If it has no water, it's rek, it's empty. What's the double lashon, the repetition here? Aval nechashim v'akrabim yeshbo. That meaning, if rek en bo mayim, but there's no water, but there's snakes and scorpions inside. Ubi'er ha'inyan b'sefer Orah Torah. And in a book called Orah Torah, this is explained in more detail. Hasitra achra, which is basically the side of the tum'ah, the other side, like we discussed last week with the chartumim and the magicians. Nikret bor rek en bo mayim, is called a pit that is empty and has no water. Ki be'emet hara eno bechinat yesh, because he says really ra, evil, has no substance to it. It has no yesh at all. Klal has en bechinat yesh klal rak he'eder ve'ayin. That the only thing that is when there's evil is when something is missing, when there's a vacuum, when there's a removal of holiness. That is what allows there to be evil. So evil, according to what we're learning here, has no substance. It's basically when it's missing holiness, that's evil. Because in any place where the holiness leaves, v'nish'ar rekut, and it's left empty, hi ha-sitra achra, that is the sitra achra, that is the other side. Umisham mitziut umot ha'olam, and from there is where the nefesh, the souls of the umot ha'olam, the nations of the world, emanate from. The chol sitrin bishin shenimtzaim kavyachol mihastarat or panav yitbarach, and all different types of evil sides that are found kavyachol, which means not found because we said they have no mamashut, they have no yesh, so it's kavyachol, it's sort of like not really, that they're found when there is the absence or the removal of the or, the light of the countenance of Hashem. Now, of course, there's really never a place where there's no or Hashem. It's the apparent removal of that light. Whoever is evil, a person who's evil, what does that mean? That he's missing good deeds. He'eder, he's missing holiness, and that missing of holiness, that is called evil. Ubehayem kriim etim. And we know about the Rishaim that when they are alive, they're called dead. Shemistalek mimenu hayesh nishar bechinat bor amok. Because why are they called metim? Because when the yesh, which is the substance, is left, which is the holiness, is the substance. When that is left, what's behind? What's behind is bor, is a pit, a deep, empty pit. Umasha sitra chanikra en bomaim, and the fact that the sitra achra, the other side, is called en bomaim. Bi'er sham od, he also explained there in Orah Torah. Shamaim tachtonim let lehu migarmayu klum, that the waters from below have nothing to, the waters that are below, which is the Malchut also represents the water from below, has nothing of itself. Rak mashehem gormim latzmiach. But what does water do? It causes things to grow. Ulegadel hu al yedeh shenishpa mehem bahem koach mimayim elyonim shem ruchanim. And what gives koach of the water, the lower waters, to cause things to grow and to become bigger? It's because those waters that are below are influenced, receive shefa, abundance, from the strength of the waters from above, and that, of course, is the binah, shehem ruchanim, that those are spiritual, which means the only reason that water has the properties that it does is because the water is connected to the upper waters, and it's the upper waters, those spiritual waters, that give water the koach that it's able to do the things it can do in this world. V'hu kochav sheyesh lechol esev hamakebo. And this is the concept that's brought in the Yerushalmi. And of course, there's a discussion amongst the Rishonim. They have the people, the rabbis like the Rambam, who had his ideas of hashgacha pratit, divine providence, and that that divine providence is on individual human beings, but on the species there's a hashgacha klalit. There's a providence on the entire species, but this is not the da'at of the Kabbalah. The da'at of the Kabbalah is brought here, and this is from Yerushalmi, which means everything has a kochav. Kochav means not a star, but a mazal. Mazal basically is the concept of the kochav. What do we call the constellations in Hebrew? We call them mazalot. And why are they called mazalot? That's a remez from the pasuk that we read in last week's parasha. Yizal mayim midaliyav. What is Yizal mayim midaliyav? Let water come from, or emanate from, or flow from its source. So we see the concept of mazal is flow, and the source of all the flow is the keter. So we see the kochav represents the will of Hashem revealed through the constellations. It's not, God forbid, that the constellations have any power whatsoever. Nothing has any power except for God. Everything goes according to God's will. Shashilton lefanecha, like we say on the holidays. But through a person who understands the mazalot, which is the constellations, you could perhaps get an idea of what the will of Hashem is. So continuing on over here, so the Yerushalmi says that every single blade of grass has a kochav, has a star, kavyachol, a mazal, that is makebo, that hits it, the omer lo gadel, and tells it to grow. He just described that here. Why does anything grow? Because of water. Water allows things to grow. But the property of the water that we have in this world, the lower waters, is only because of the property of the water in the shamayim. Of Of course, here we're not talking about physical water in the Shamayim, we're talking about spiritual water. So therefore, because the water in the Shamayim gives abundance to the water in the land, that's why the water has the ability. And that's why the Yerushalmi over here quotes and says that basically nothing happens in the world, not even a blade of grass growing, without the will of Hashem, which is a little different than some of the Rishonim regarding their opinions with regarding the Hashgacha, the divine providence. Continuing on, the Hainu, what does this mean? HaKoach HaRuchani Shelamala, the force, the spiritual force that is in the Shamayim. Shehu HaMayim Sh'al HaRakia, that's the water that's on top of the Rakia. We remember that on the second day, what does it say? The Rakia was made Lahavdil Ben Mayim Lamayim, to separate the waters above from the waters below. That's what the Rakia does. It made that separation, the separation between the waters above, Mayim Elyonim and Mayim Tachtonim. So what is it saying over here? The Koach Ruchani, the spiritual force, that is the Mayim, is the source of that force is where? Is from the Rakia, which basically means from the upper waters, which is the Ruchaniyut, the spiritual. Ma she'en ken kochot hara. But this is not the case with the forces of evil. Nikraim Mayim Metim. So we discussed Mayim Chayim. That's the concept of living water. That's water that has a continued source, like a collection of water that has Mayim Chaimim. We read about in last week's parasha also. Mayim Hayim El Keli. That's water that's like a ma'ayan, that's a fountain, a natural fountain, because that water is moving, it's always filling up, that even if you remove water from that, it gets filled up again. But then we have Mayim Metim. If there's Mayim Chaim, then there's Mayim Metim. She'enam Kishurim Lemakor HaChaim. And they are not tied to the source of life. They are not. And that's what we're talking about here. Ve'oro yitbarach lo me'ir bahem. And the light of God does not shine on them. We said already that what is evil? Evil is the absence of the shine of light. Is the absence of the countenance, the panav of Hashem in that place. That's really what evil is. It has no mamashut. It has no yesh. It's only when kedusha, holiness, is removed. V'lachen hem nikraim b'chol makom mayim sruchim u'mekulkalim. And these waters are all called in every place. They're called sruchim, which are rancid or dirty waters. Milkukalim, messed up waters or dirty waters. Umetim b'li hayut klal. And they cause death. They are dead waters, which means they don't give any life, and they have no ability to give life. This is what the rabbi said over here. We also have a similar understanding that we discussed. That's also we brought up in also last week's parasha. We read Parashat Chukat. And then it talks about Kol ha'ba'al ohel kol asher ba'o yitma shiv'at yamim. The concept of tumat met, that when there's a dead Jewish body not only causes there to be tum'ah when somebody touches it, even a dead Gentile will cause there to be tum'ah if a person touches a Gentile body that is dead. But unlike a Gentile body, which can only transfer the tum'ah to a person when it's touched, the tumah of a Jewish body can transfer into a person, to a Jewish person, even if you don't touch it, even if it's an ohel. And so, of course, the question is asked, why should it be that the dead body of a Jew causes more tumah than the dead body of a Gentile? And the reason for that is, once again, because the living body of a Jew has such potential to have holiness more than the Gentile does. So because it's a bigger kli, it's able to machzik more holiness. When that holiness leaves, it causes a greater amount of tum'ah. And that's why a dead Jewish body causes more tum'ah than a dead Gentile body. Okay, continuing on below the line. And we said that the bore is empty, but is really not empty. It fills up with snakes and scorpions, which we said is the analogy of the snakes and scorpions is the forces of the tumah, the forces of the impurity. Because the forces of evil have no ability to give life. And all of the life that is inside those, shall we say, evil forces, comes from the pigam of the chet, which comes from sin. What does sin do? Sin causes there to be a removal of holiness. Same thing, the rabbi is saying in a different way. The harisa shigaram Adam bekochot beolamot hakedoshim, and the destruction that Adam, here I think he's talking about Adam Harishon, that the destruction that Adam Harishon caused in the holy worlds, because just like basically a Gentile does not have the ability to affect the spiritual worlds to the same extent, or by even close, as a Jew. A Jew has such potential to affect the spiritual worlds in a positive way, but on the same token, a Jew also has chas v'shalom, the ability to affect the spiritual worlds in a negative way. Adam Harishon, who contained all of the neshamot of all of the Jewish people that are over to be born, when he made that sin by eating from the tree, it caused a pagam, it caused damage in the shamayim. That's what he's saying here. And based on that damage that happens, that's where the klipa, that's where the side of the tum'ah gets its strength from. Mu'at derech tzinorot orchot al kalkalot, which means it comes by, just like we have the kedusha that comes through the pipes that are called rechovot hanahar, or the pipes that are also called the ze'er anpin, the six. Those are the pipes that bring the abundance, the holy abundance, from the gar, the gima rishonim, the keter, chochman, binah, to the Malchut. Well, similarly here we also have tzinorot that also are crooked. Al kalkalot is crooked, and those pipes, unlike the pipes that we talked about regarding the kedusha, are straight. These pipes are crooked, and these pipes, what they do is they bring the tum'ah. They bring, and the nitzotzot, the sparks, because the holy person that did something that's a chet causes that shefa to go to the side of the tum'ah. The kochot harava klipot mehapsim hayot v'nikiyah min kedusha, and all the forces of evil and the husks, which is also the force of evil, mehapsim, they're always looking for life. Where do they find life? They can't find life in evil, so they have to have yenikah. They have to get from the kedusha, holiness. Well, how do they get from the kedusha? Ubechol makom shemistaleket kedusha, any place where the kedusha leaves. When the kedusha leaves a place, hem mitkabtzim, they gather there. Ubaim linok et she'eriyut hakedusha harshonot sham, and they come to get sustained from the leftover holiness that is in the place that was vacated. This is very, very similar to what we talked about in Da'at Elokim regarding the tzimtzum. And this is also once again the dead body, the concept of the soul leaving. So these forces will come there. These other side will come there to be yonek, to be getting sustained through the leftover kedusha. And we also see this in the Torah. It says about Vayetze Yaakov mi Be'er Sheva vayelech harana. And if you look at the Rashi, what does Rashi say? What does it mean yet Vayetze Yaakov mi Be'er Sheva? We just learned that Yaakov left for Be'er Sheva. What does it mean? Why does it have to say Vayetze? Zok the Rashi. When the tzaddik leaves the town, Pana Ziva, Pana Kvoda, Pana Hodara. When the tzaddik leaves the town, who feels that? The righteous people feel that missing tzaddik. So Yitzchak and Rivka felt that Yaakov had left. So we see when there's a tzaddik leaving, it leaves a roshem. That's the term that Rashi uses, roshem. Roshem is the Rishimu that we discussed in Da'at Elokim. That's the leftover from the holiness that was there. And again, not talking about in the Tzimtzum, not the Klipot have no ability to get to that, but that's the same concept but in a much higher level. For all those who don't know what I'm talking about, don't worry about it. It's not germane. It's for those who were with us with the Da'at Elokim Shiurim. So continuing on. So we see when the kedusha leaves, there's a little bit of kedusha that is left there, and that's where the klipot come to get their sustenance. There's the chiyut, They're living from that kedusha that's left there. Kinyan hashikatzim v'ramasim shebaim el chavit hadvash. And he brings an example that again, people who have honey, that basically when you have a barrel that's filled with honey, when you take the honey out of the barrel, what happens after you empty the barrel? There's still some remnants of honey inside because the honey is very, very thick. And what happens? Shekatzim and rimasim, all kinds of worms and all kinds of other creepy, crawly creatures will come inside the chavit to take from the honey that's left over. Even though you've emptied the barrel from all the honey, nevertheless, there's still some remnant there. And we see, and he brings this example, that when a person has an empty barrel that had honey inside, that there's all kinds of bugs and things like that that will be there. And we see any place where life leaves, when Chaim, which is of course Chaim of holiness, Chaim of non-holiness is death, is metim. So any time when Chaim leaves a place, Baha Tuma, that's the Tuma will come to that place. Tumat met mistaleket haneshama. So we see the concept of Tumat met. Why does a person become Tameh? Why does the body become Tameh? Because the soul leaves. When the soul leaves, it abandons, the Kedusha leaves, and then there's obviously remnant of the Kedusha that's still on that Jewish body, and that's where the Klipot come to get their benefit from. The Tumat Keri, the Tumat Leda. And both of these are the same thing. Keri, what is Keri? That's a seminal emission that's not for the purposes of giving birth to children. Or in a situation that sperm which has the potential for life dies. Or Tumat Leda. Why does a woman, when she gives birth to a child, why does she become Tameh? Once again, because there's the placenta is dying, there's all kinds of things that are dying inside there. And that's Tumat Leda. The Gam Balayla, and also at night. And at night, what happens? Part of the soul of a person, ola lamala, goes up. Ola lamala, the soul goes up to the shamayim. Lidabek be'elyonim, to attach to the upper worlds. Shora alav tum'ah. And then what happens? As soon as that holiness leaves the person when he sleeps, what comes in its place? What rests on its place is the tum'ah, is the impure side. V'tzarich litol yadav. And this we were learning, of course, these past 2 Sundays, we were discussing the laws of netilat yadayim shachrit in our shiur for Masechet Brachot. And this is always wonderful. When a person is learning something, you see that whatever you're learning is connected to it. It means that you're, whatever this is siyata dishmaya, bezat Hashem. And what we're learning here is obviously because we couldn't have predicted this is what we're learning, but this is what we're discussing this past Sunday in the Gemara class. So we see you have a mitzvah, you have to do netilat yadayim with a keli when you wake up in the morning. We said to remove the ruach ra. But why is there ruach ra? Why is there a bad spirit there? Because when the soul left the body, or the part of the soul that left the body while the person is sleeping, the tum'ah comes to that place. And the way we get rid of it is by doing the netilat yadayim, as he says here. Vala pasuk, and the pasuk that says, this is from Tehillim, al tetar alai be'er piha, meaning what? Bi'er b'Rashi, Rashi explained, Sham, shelo tizkor alai be'er tzara nochriat piha levalaeni. So that what shouldn't happen, that your person's asking and praying that the be'er tzara, we said there's a be'er that's open, the rachav, that's the good be'er. Then there's a narrow be'er, that's the one that doesn't hold any water. That's called be'er nochriya, the Gentile or the foreign be'er, the foreign well. And so basically we're asking that it should not close me up and swallow me up, which means that the tum'ah should not be able to overtake. And this, of course, a person is asking for the holiness to be with them. The kavanah tfilat David HaMelech, and what's the kavanah when David HaMelech said this? Lehinatzel mikochot hara, for a person to be saved from the forces of the evil forces, the klipot and the husks. Hanikraim be'er tzara nochriya, that are called be'er tzara nochriya. Hamazikim et ha'adam verotzim levalo chayim. And these are mazikim. This is perhaps what the Gemara is talking about when it says the mazikim, which are demons translated poorly. Okay, the mazikim, then they cause damage to the person, and verotzim levalo chayim, and they want to swallow him up. Why do they want to come to him? Because he's got kedusha there, so they're attracted to that. Ayen sham mishmuel parashat Tazria, and there's a perush called Shem Mishmuel in parashat Tazria, which of course talks about the Yoledet. Look there in more detail. Now we're going to go back to the book Shaare Orah, which is on top of the line on page Samach Daled. Velif Amim Nikra Shem Adonay B'Kinui Yam. And often the name Aleph Daled Nun Yud, which we said is the first Sha'ar, the first gate, which we said is the Malchut, the Nukva, is also called by the Kinui Yam, the word Yam, which is improperly translated in English as ocean, and we'll see why I say it's improperly translated. And the reason is because all types of brechot, which are basically collections of water, shefa and abundance, atzilut and the emanations, nimshachim elav kidimyon hanechalim, that they're drawn to the yam like streams. A nachal is a stream or a river. So all the rivers go to the yam. The zeu sod, and this is the sod from Kohelet, when Shlomo Melech said, Kol hanechalim holchim el hayam. All of the rivers, all of the streams go holchim el hayam. They go to the yam. They go to the quote-unquote ocean. We'll see why it's not ocean in a second. Ulshon yam, and the language yam, hu hakarka hamachazik et hamayim. That's the key factor. We usually translate yam as ocean. That's not correct. Yam is really the seabed. So we understand that the water collects on the seabed. So the word yam is not referring to the water. The yam is referring to the seabed, the kli, the utensil that is used to hold the water in the ocean. Ke'omro, as it says, Kamayim layam mechasim, like the waters that cover the ocean. Well, what does that mean? If ocean is water, what does this pasuk mean? Water covers water, what does that mean? No. Kamayim layam mechasim, meaning what? Like the water that covers the seabed. That would be the appropriate translation of this pasuk from Yishaya Yud Aleph Tet, Lefi Asod. Ve'omer, and it also said, Ul mikveh hamayim kara yamim. And to the gathering of water, kara yamim, which means we translate the word yamim as oceans, but really, where does the water gather? The water gathers at the seabed, which means these seabeds or these kelim, these utensils that are there to hold the water, that's what is called yam. And we also know Shlomo HaMelech in the Bet HaMikdash made a yam, which was a big, it wasn't an ocean, so that's a wrong translation. It was called Yam Shel Shlomo. It was basically a big basin of water with, I think it was the 12 bulls that were around it, and it was very, very big. It held a tremendous amount of water, and that's where they would get the water in order to do various washing. So that was called Yam Shel Shlomo. So we see a yam is basically a utensil that holds a lot of water. Continue on. Bet kibul hamayim nikra yam. So he says flat out that the bet kibul, the opening, the utensil, the kli that holds the water, that's called yam. Continuing on, umitoch ze hayam, and from this water, from this kli that's machzik the water, nivru kama malachim umachanot. Were created various different types of angels and camps. The kama minim mishunim, and all other types of different types of strange, different types of species. Asher sharatzu hamayim asher betocho, that the water gave birth to, that was inside the kli, that was inside the utensil. The kulan merkavot umachanot elyonot, and this is all a remez to things in the shamayim. The kulan merkavot umachanot elyonot, they're all merkava is a chariot, and machanot camps, elyonot above. The alzer ramaz, and to this it's hinted in the Tehillim. Ze hayam gadol urchav yadayim sham remes ve'en mispar hayot ketanot im gedolot. This is of course from Barachi Nafshi, which we read in Rosh Chodesh. This is from Tehillim chapter 104, verse number 25. There is a sea vast and wide, with its creatures beyond number, living things small and great. That's what this pasuk means. Obviously here the yam is not the sea, it really means the kli that is holding the water, like we've discussed. Ubetoch hayam hazeh, and inside this kli, inside this utensil, kama sfinot, There are all kinds of boats. V'kama shayatim, and all kinds of sails. V'kama degalim, and all kinds of flags. Prushim al rosh hatoren, that are on the mast, on the mast of the boat. That's where the flag is. Shalasfinot. V'kama mine galim, and all kinds of waves. Umine sha'on, and all kinds of wind. Mitgalgalim betocho, that are inside that kli, that are inside that utensil that's called the yam. The alav ne'emar, and this it is said, sham oniyot yahalechun. Once again in Baruchi Nafshi, there boats will go. Ubitze yamze, and at the end of this yam, which means ktse is the border, at the end of this yam, yesh makom echad, there's a place, hanikra yam suf. What is yam suf? We're going to see the sod of this, the secret of this shortly. V'hu karov ligvul techumei haaretz, and this is close to where this the land is, which means that's the border, that's the end of the kli that is called the yam, and that's why it's called yam suf, which is close to the river, which is close to the ocean, close to the land. Continue on to the next page. Hayodiyah b'midat Adonay, that is known in the midah, in the attribute of Adonay. Umin hamakom hazeh, and from this place, yarad hadin al Mitzrayim. This is where the judgment came to Egypt. V'nitbe'u b'yam suf, and they were drowned in Yam Suf. Shel mata, that is below. This is Yam Suf shel mata. There's also Yam Suf shel mala. We'll see. V'zeu sod ki Adonay nilcham lahem meMitzrayim. And this is the sod when it says in the Torah that Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, that Hashem was fighting for them in Mitzrayim. Incidentally, where did the Egyptians die? They didn't die in the ocean. V'ya Yisrael Mitzrayim met al Sfat Hayam. They died on the Sfat, which means on the shore. That's where they died, on the border between the ocean, between the water and where the land is. Okay. Any questions on what Rav Gikatilia said? And then we're going to go back a little bit to what's below the lines. We're on Nud Zayin. If anyone can see where I'm the screen, I'm pointing to it now. Bikinui Yam. So we said that the Kinui Yam, one of the Yam is referring to the Malchut, the Aleph Daled Nun Yud. Kesha Malchut mekabelet min habina. When the Malchut receives from the Binah, which is of course the female Sfirah that is above the Malchut, Az nikret be'er ma'im chayim. This we've learned already, I think, a couple of weeks ago. When the ma'im is received, when the Malchut receiving from the Binah directly, this is called be'er ma'im chayim. The Binah is called be'er ma'im chayim, and the Malchut in this situation is called Be'er Sheva. So when it's Be'er Mayim Chaimi is referring to the of the Binah, then Be'er Sheva is what the Malchut would be called in that situation. Why is it called Be'er Sheva, like we discussed? Because it receives the Shefa from 7 Sfirot, which is the Binah, Chesed, Givurah, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, and Yesod, and that's where the Malchut receives its Shefa from. But when the Malchut is receiving the Shefa from the Chochmah, which is the Sfirah that's above the Binah, then it's called Yam. That's when the Malchut is called Yam. Kumoshu bi'eh Sefer Pardes, like explained in the book Sefer Pardes Rimonim. HaMalchut nikret Yam. The Malchut is called Yam. Leharot ki hi rechava. To show that she is wide. Rechava means very open, means she can accept a lot of shefa. Mele'a mayim shekibla, full of water that she has received, of water being shefa. Omnam nikret yam, but she's called yam. The malchut is called yam. Keshi mekabelet me'chochma, when she receives from the sfirah of the chochma. The chen piresh bazohar, and this is also explained in the Zohar in Parashat Behalotecha. V'ikre be'er, v'ikre yam, that the malchut is called be'er and it's also called yam. Yam kad itnehara minehara ila'a, the abba. We see what? That when is it called yam? When she is getting nahara, when she's getting shefa, abundance, from the nahara ilah, from the upper nahar, which is the abba. Abba, we said, is the partsuf of the chokhmah. Kedin ikre yam, and that's when it's called yam. The nehalin azlin legaveh, that all of the streams go to her. Kema de'at amar, like it says in Kohelet, Kol hanehalim holchim el hayam vehayam enenu maleh. All of the streams go to the yam, but the yam is not full, which means the yam is always receiving more abundance from the chokhmah. Continuing on, ve'bi'ur, and the explanation. We'll go to the next page below the line. Shoresh briat kol ha'olomot hi misfirat ha'chokhmah. The root of the creation of all the worlds is Sfirat HaChokhmah, as we've discussed before. Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim et haaretz. What does that mean, Bereshit, in the beginning? What is Reshit? Reshit Chokhmah Yirat Hashem. So don't read it as Bereshit. And if you look at the Aramaic translation that's called Yerushalmi on the Torah, it says B'chokhmata, which means B'chokhmah, which means Reshit is Chokhmah, from the pasuk Reshit Chokhmah, and this is also said in the Zohar, by the way. So Kol Amot Hu Misfirat HaChokhmah, which means the creation of all the worlds is from the Sfirah of the Chokhmah, and this is the concept of Histakel Be'oraita Ubara Alma, that God looked into the Torah and created the world, because the Torah represents the Chokhmah. Continuing on, Komo shene'emar, as it says, Ma rabu ma'asecha Adonai kulam bechokhmah asita. How great are your deeds, Hashem? Kulam, all of them you did with chokhmah. They were all done with chokhmah, meaning what? With the sfirah of the chokhmah. Usfirat ha-chokhmah hi shoresh kol ha'alamot. And the sfirah of the chokhmah is the root for all the worlds. Umimena mitpashtim ha'orot belev netivot chokhmah el sfirat habina. And from the chokhmah, mitpashet is drawn, or comes from the orot, the lights of the lamed bet netivot, the 32 different paths, chokhmah el sfirat habina, to the sfirah of the bina. Umisham derech zer anpin, and from the bina, by way of the zer anpin, which is the 6 sfirot that are below the bina, el sfirat hamalchut, to the sfirah of the malchut, livro velivnot et hametziut be'olamot hatachtonim, to create and to build the reality in the world, the lower worlds. As we said, the lower worlds being the created worlds. Ukeshana medabrim al hashpa'at sfirat hamalchut, and when we talk about the influence of the sfirah of the malchut, the receiving, or the hashpa'ah, the abundance that comes from the sfirat malchut, libyan v'kiyum ha'olamot, for the purposes of the building and the existence of the world, anu korim la yam. That's another time we're going to call the malchut yam. Shehi hashpa'ah ha'kolelet et kol ha'metziut mishosha yam ha'chokhmah. And this is basically she's the hashpa'ah, she's the abundance, the influencer, ha'kolelet, that includes, again, kala, kolelet, this is also feminine, this is the malchut, et kol ha'metziut, all the reality, mishosha yam ha'chokhmah, from the yam of the chokhmah, which is the sfirah of the chokhmah. Ma she'en ken ha'brecha, but this is contradiction to the brecha, ve'be'er, and the well. Hi tosefet haribui, is the addition, is more, shel hashgachato yitbarach, of God's hashgacha, latet bracha lechol ish va'ish, to give bracha to each person, lefi ma'asav, according to his deeds, betosefet shel kedusha alyona me'etz hachayim, from extra holiness, from more kedusha, from the etz hachayim. Let's go to the next one. Nunchet, Vilashon Yam. Bi'eh Sefer Pardes Rimonim, it explained in the book Pardes Rimonim, V'zel Shono, and this is his language, this is his words. Ki biyot hamila yam more galui, because the word yam is basically is showing a revelation, a revealing, an exposing. Ki yod, because the yod vav daled, shehi ne'elemet, is hidden, is small, because yod is a very, very small letter. Mitpasheshet el daled sitrin, it continues to the 4 different sitrin, the 4 different sides. Shehi mem, which is mem. 4 times 10 is 40. V'nimtzet hayod shehu, that's the yam. Yod is nelemet, and the mem is representing the 4 times 10, which is the 10 sfirot of the 4 worlds. Continuing on, v'nimtzet hayod shehu nekuda bli harchava, and the yod is really like a dot, which has no. We know that a period or a point has no dimensions. Bli harchava, that's represented by the yod. Mitrachevet el mem, but she continues to the mem, umitpasheshet el dalad ketzavot, and she spreads out to the 4 different directions, kayam hamitrachev veholech, like the water, like the ocean, or the waters in the ocean, which spread. We know there's a concept in physics of water always seeks its level. If you expand the kli, the water expands. Obviously it goes down a little bit, but expands to fill the kli. The kavanato, and the kavana is, shabina nikret mem yud. So we see the bina is called mi. Okay, and there's a pasuk that they quote, mi bara ele, and that's called the binah, is mem yud. So we see yod mem is the chokhmah, and the mem yud is the binah. V'hi adain setuma, and she is still closed. V'lachen hamem hi rishona, and that's why the mem is first. Ma she'en ken, but that's not the case. Shekol hanechalim yordim el hayam, that all of the streams go to the yam. Ve'amalchut megale et hayod, and the malchut reveals the yod. The goal of the malchut, once again, is to reveal what is hidden. Shehu nekudah hakolelet et hakol, that this is the point that includes everything. And what does the malchut do? She reveals what's hidden and makes it into all kinds of details, which is exactly the function of the female, if you think about it, like we've discussed before. And boneh, and the malchut builds all the forces, all the kochot lipratim. She basically makes it into pieces, into pratim. Umehem boneh et ha'olamot ha'tachtonim, and from there all the worlds, the lower worlds, are made. Kedumat hanukva, similar just like the nukva, the female. Shemitzayeret et surat havalad mitipa shekibla. That the female, the job of the female is what? That she forms the image of the vlad, of the baby, from the tipa, from the drop of sperm that she was impregnated with, that she received. Umashmut lashon yam, and the understanding of the word, of the language yam, more al zeh, speaks about that. Shehaya mitpashet ledal stadim harumzim beot mem, that spreads to the 4 sides, which is the 4 corners, the 4 ruchot harimuzim beot mem, that are hinted to in the letter mem. So continue on. Nun tet. Kama sfinot v'kama shayatim v'kama degalim. So he was describing that the yam has all of these things inside. Ha-malchut hi shoresh ha-kochot ha-tachtonim. The malchut is the root of all of the lower forces. Mahanot ha-shechinah, the encampments of the shechinah, the kochot ha-tum'ah, and the forces of the tum'ah. Uba-zohar, and the Zohar, himshil kochot elu, gave an analogy for those forces, b'mishalim shel kochot, and gave the analogy of those forces in the Zohar to other forces, hanimtzaim bayam, that are found in the ocean, that are found in the water, that are found in the sea. Sfinot shayatim udgalim. Sfinot, boats, shayatim, sailboats, and digalim are sails, and digalim are flags. Hadigalim morim al arba macharot shechinah. This we discussed. If you remember, we gave a shiur about this when I talked about, I think it was in Parashat Bemidbar. I don't think I posted it yet, so I'm sorry if someone was not at that shiur. I talked about the 4 digalim, I talked about the 4 machanot of the Shekhinah, and I talked about the 4 different angels that are represented by those 4 machanot of the Shekhinah. The sfinot hem kochot hakedusha, and the sfinot is the imagery of that is the holy forces hanishpaim mina malchut, that are influenced from the malchut. The gam kochot hatuma, and also for the forces of the tuma, yesh sfinot, and there are also sfinot, there are also boats, shem kochot hatuma, that are considered that the analogy is the kochot of the tuma, shem oniot ava habaim mina hanachash, and these are boats of eva, of hatred, ava, I think that's hatred, habaim menachash, that come from the snake, hakadmoni, which is caused the nachash that was in the Garden of Eden, shebaim lilachem im kochot hakedusha, that come to fight against the kochot of the kedusha, kedita bazoar, like explained in the Zohar in Parshat Chayei Sarah. Ketiv, it's written in Iyov, halafu am oniot eva. The Chalafu Am Anuyat Eva. Deha Kama Arbin Shatin Go Yama Rabba. How many different types of these things are in the great war in the ocean. Vit arbin visfinin mitparshin daminda, and each one is from the other one. Vinun arbin dehai nachash shat begavayo ikron oniot eva. And these boats, these sfinot, are basically, this is from the nachash, and this is called oniot eva. Okay, let's do the next one. Yam Suf. This is what we discussed above the line. Yam Suf, Samach. The kol kochot hachitzonim, for all of the forces of the chitzonim, the external forces, la'atzilut, that are outside the atzilut, that's of course the kochot of the tumah, hasarim ha'elyonim v'kochot ha'tumah, the sarim, the ministers in the ministers in the shamayim, and the forces of the tumah and the forces of the impurity. Yesh yenika misof madrigot hakedusha. The suf and the sof is the same exact shoresh. Misof madrigot hakedusha, from the end, from the lower aspects of the levels of the kedusha. Misof Sfirat HaMalchut, from the end of the Malchut, Hanikret Yam Suf, that is called Yam Suf. With the same Hebrew, Sof and Suf is the same thing. Kmo shekatab bePadesh Rimonim, like explained in the Padesh Rimonim. V'nikret Yam Suf, it's called Yam Suf. Lefi shehi Sof Kol HaMadrigot. This is the Sof, the end of all the Madrigot. V'i bechinat od lemata mayim kanoda. And this is the bechina that is also below water, like the waters that are below, that are lower. That's the waters of the tum'ah, as we say it's talking about here. And this is also the concept of the in Hebrew we have 5 letters that have sofit forms, but out of those 5 letters that have sofit forms, only 4 of them have parts of them that go below the line. Like the Nun Sofit, like the Kaf Sofit, like the Tzadi Sofit, like the Pe Sofit. The Mem Sofit doesn't go below the line. And that in the language is called Raglea Yordot Mavet, because they go below the line. This is exactly what he's hinting to over here. Continuing on, Umisham Yenikat Hasar, and from there is the Sar, the certain angel, Shel Mitzrayim, the angel of Egypt, Shehu Rosh Lasarim, that he is the head of all the Sarim of the Goyim, Umisham Yarad Hadin, and from there came the judgment, Al Mitzrayim, on the Egyptians, Kmosh Katav Rabbeinu B'Shaare Tzedek, like our rabbi wrote in Shaare Tzedek. Rabbeinu Gid Katilia wrote another book called Shaare Tzedek. Hine Eret Mitzrayim, we see that the land of Egypt, he Eret Shniya LeEretz Yisrael, is like a secondary land to the land of Israel. We see this in the Torah. K'maaseh Eretz Mitzrayim asher yeshavtem ba lo ta'asu k'maaseh Eretz Canaan asher. So we see that always there's the parallel that's brought between Egypt and Canaan, or Egypt and Israel. We see this also that when it talks about Sdom, it talks about that it's like Gan Mitzrayim. Sdom is like Gan Mitzrayim. But of course the land of Israel is better than Sdom and better than Mitzrayim. So continuing on, Lefichach Nikret Mitzrayim, and that's why it's called Mitzrayim. Klomar, Lashon Mitzrayim Hasmucha LeNachala, like that's connected to the Nachala, which means Mitzarim, which means it's the border of the Nachala being the land of Egypt, and Mitzrayim is bordered to the land of Israel. V'nei Mitzrayim HaMetzar, Sasamuch Eretz Yisrael. And Mitzrayim is also from the Lashon of Metzar. Min HaMetzar Karatiyah. Metzar is something narrow or trouble. Tsar is trouble. Mitzrayim HaMetzar HaSamuch Eretz Yisrael. It's the trouble thing that's called for Eretz Yisrael. Radfu Acharei Yisrael. They ran after the Jewish people. Ad Shigiu LeYamsuf, until they got to the Yamsuf. Ukeshigiu Le'oto Makom. And when they got to the Yamsuf, Kabla Otam Miyada Hanikret Yamsuf. The Yamsuf received them in her hand, meaning what? They were drowned in there. Shehu Sod Yam, that is the sod of the Yam. Hanikra Sof Hamadrigot Be'eses Sfiran, that is called the end of all of the levels, Be'eses Sfiran, of the 10 Sfirot. Kedita Bazora, like explained the Zohar in Parashat Beshalach. Vayom Mitzrayim, what does it mean? Mitzrayim dilatata, Mitzrayim that is below. Ki Hashem nilcham lahem b'Mitzrayim, because God fought for them in Egypt. Mitzrayim de le'elah, there's a Mitzrayim in Elah, that's above. Dekevan de itbar helehon me'elah, because when the soldiers above kedin itbar hela betukva de lahon tata. So when it's basically the way it works is when the minister in the shamayim is conquered. Not that God can't conquer anytime he wants, of course he can, but when the minister in the shamayim goes down, that's when his nation goes down. Haduhu dichtiv, and this is what it's written: Ki Hashem nilcham lahem b'Mitzrayim, that God fought for them in Egypt. She'oto or elyon, that specific light above light, shall gilui malchuto yitbarach, of the revealing of his kingship, which of course is Yamsuf. It says that al Yamsuf. What does it say? That Ra'ah shivcha al hayam ma shelo Ra'ah Yechezkel ben Buzia Kohen. That a shivcha, a maidservant on the ocean in the Yamsuf, saw a greater gilu shechina than Yechezkel ben Buzia Kohen. And Yechezkel, of course, in chapter 1 and in chapter 10, saw the Merkava, which was a tremendous revelation. So Yechezkel had a revelation of the Merkava, but a shivcha Yam saw more at the Yamsuf because it was a gilui of Malchuto, or the gilui of the Yichud. This is what the Ramchal would say. Hanikra Yamsuf, that's called Yamsuf, Besof HaMadrigot, at the end of the Madrigot, which means this concept of evil getting killed, getting destroyed. This is a gilui of the Yichud. And to understand this a little deeper, anyone who's a monotheist, any religion that believes in one God, has to figure out a way to reconcile. If we say there's only one force that controls everything, then how do we deal with a tzaddik viralo? How do we deal with a righteous person that's suffering? This is a very common answer. If you believe in two gods, even though it's a sheker, it's very easy. You have the God of good and you have the God of evil, chas v'shalom, and whoever one is more strong, that's why the tzaddik is suffering, because the God of evil is more powerful in that situation. Of course, that's a sheker. Anyone who's a monotheist has to recognize that there's this conflict. We have to recognize that everything comes from, and we don't understand sometimes. But when evil is destroyed, that is the gilui of the yichud. It resolves the question. Because if a person has a safek, and we should not have any safek, we have to know that there's only one and there's no safek. But the revelation of that is the revelation of the yichud, of the one, that there's only one. And that's why the yam was the same thing that saved the Jewish people, was what destroyed the Egyptians. And that's not insignificant. Continuing on, he pila tasara elyon shel Mitzrayim, that the Sara elyon, his name was Rachav, if I'm not mistaken, was also brought down. And because the Rachav was brought down, then Egypt was also brought down. The Shavar at Kocho, and he broke his strength, he broke his force, he stopped his force because everything God controls. The Tokfo, and his power. Tavu Mitzrayim b'Yamsuf, and that's why the Egyptians drowned in the Yamsuf. And why Davka the Yamsuf? That's the sof, the end, as we see here. Let's see if we can do the next paragraph in the Shaare Orah, and then Bezat Hashem will pick up below the line next week. The Chachmei Pnimiyut, and the sages of the secrets of the inner wisdom, which of course is the Kabbalah, me'achazim lif'amim lemidah zot hanikret Adonay Yam HaChochma, that sometimes they refer to this midah of Aleph Dalet Nun Yud as Yam HaChochma, the yam, the collection of the wisdom. Lefi shekol minei chochma v'atzilut, because all types of wisdom and atzilut emanation, hanimshachim min hachochma elyona, that come from the sfira of the chochma, kulan noflin betocho, all of them fall within her. Umimenu, continuing on to page Samach Zayin, shoavim kol chachmei lev chochma, and from that well is where all the sages, chachmei lev, very careful term, chacham lev. When it's talking about lev, it's talking about someone who's learning in the pnimiyut. The Gaon Vilna basically said in a pasuk, if I'm not mistaken, from Yishaya, the Gaon Vilna explained that there were three different types of Torah. There's Torah Shbichtav, the written Torah. Then there's Torah Shebal Peh, which is the Gemara, and then there's the Sod. And those are three different levels. He learned it from a pasuk in Yishaya. So we see here, what's the difference? That in order to learn the written Torah, a person has to be able to see. In order for a person to learn the oral Torah, a person has to be able to hear. And in order for a person to learn the Sod, you have to have lev, which is not the seeing with the eyes, but seeing with the heart, the understanding. And that's why the Gemara in Masechet Chagiyah, when it's discussing about Maaseh Merkava, that you can't teach that to someone who's not mevin davar mitoch davar. He has to understand one thing from another. That's the concept of binah. Anyway, continuing on. V'zeu v'Hashem natan chokhmah liShlomo. And this is what it means when the pasuk in Melachim says, and God, Yud Kei Vav Kei, gave chokhmah liShlomo, gave wisdom to Shlomo. V'uchshenichnas b'yam chokhmah, and when Shlomo Melech was able to go into the yam of the chokhmah, haya b'koch ladat lavin kol sidrei marachot. He had the ability, the strength and ability to understand and to know all and to understand all of the different orders of the ma'arachot, which are the organizational structure, shall we say? That's ma'aracha. Elyonot v'tachtonim, above and below. V'lo nichad mimeno kol davar, and nothing was without his chokhmah, which means Shlomo Melech, as it says, was the wisest man, had the greatest amount of chokhmah. B'koach Shem Adonay, and in the strength of the force of the name Yud Aleph Daled Nun Yud, Yashav al Kiseh Yud Kei Vav Kei. He was able to sit on the Kiseh of Yud Kei Vav Kei. Umalach al ha'elyonim v'tachtonim. And he ruled over the Elyonim and the Tachtonim, the uppers and the lower, which means the spiritual upper and the people lower. He was the king here, but he was also had melucha over the Elyonim. Tzadik gozer, Hashem is mekayem, as we see. Lefisha chokhmat Elokim bekirbo la'asot mishpat, because he had the wisdom of Elokim, the wisdom of judgment, right? Bekirbo, close to him, la'asot mishpat, to do judgment. And that's what it says over here, that Shlomo Melech had the chokhmah obviously of the Torah and all different kinds of wisdom. All right, very good. Have a good evening. Baruch Adonai Olam, amen ve'amen.